Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Let's get started with this. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome to the Robart Electric presentation. This is something I've created for you guys that's been in the works for about 12 years. And this is basically an overview of the things I've created for the real estate industry to help you guys out, to make sales and make your life a lot easier when it comes to dealing with electrical concerns and so forth when you're listing a house. Well, let's get started. One of the things that we've recently created for you, and each of you that register by going to the chat and giving us your name and email address, is you will receive a copy of the seminar. We do record it, and also you're going to receive a copy of this new 32-page Realtor's Guide to walk you through a lot of the things that you will come across when you're dealing with listing a house. Today, we're going to talk about a few things that are very, very important that I found out. This is regarding the older homes. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about are 60 amp residential electrical services. This one's important. Aluminum wiring. None of you have come across a finished basement without a permit, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about legal suites. We're going to talk about a situation I'm sure every one of you have been in, that you're going into negotiations and the inspector found something and you need a quote. That's something we've fixed that problem for you. Inspector found electrical problems. What do? I'm going to tell you about Federal Pioneer black breakers. Those are things that are prominent, and I'd say 95 to 98% of the houses in pre-1965. Which is the era that we're dealing with. I'm going to talk to you about ongoing support and things that we have for you. And then I'm going to tell you about something that was recently created called the library. Let's start off with the 60 amp electrical services. 60 amp electrical services are prevalent up until about 1965, 65, 66. These are a concern to the insurance industry, because what they're telling us is new buyers cannot buy a house unless the 60 amp or 70 amp services have been upgraded to 100 amps. And now I'm going to show you guys how to identify if it's a 60 amp service, and to make your life easy, show you all the steps to go through that. The very first thing you're going to look for when you go into a residence is a main breaker in the main electrical panel. You can see here from these three pictures that each of these panels do not have a main breaker. This is prominent in a 60 amp electrical service because 100 amp main breakers didn't come out till about 1965 or 1966. Now, if you do find a main breaker, what you're looking for is on the end of the handle. It will say either 100 or 60 amp. This is important to find. Now, I don't want you to be confused, because on the sticker that is on the electrical panel, sometimes it will say 100 amp max, and sometimes it'll just say 100 amps. This is not the rating of the electrical service. Many, many years ago, when I first started these presentations, the realtors were coming to me and saying, well, yes, we listed it as a 100 amp service because that's what it said on the sticker. Well, that's incorrect. It is not the sticker. What this is this is the manufacturer's rating of that particular piece of equipment. It's got nothing to do with the service. So the first thing you're looking for to determine if it's a 100 amp service is there a main breaker? The next thing you're looking for is the weather head. That is the pipe that connects the alley to the house. These are the ones that accept the wires coming across the yard and attaching onto the house. Now you can see the picture on the left. This weather head is above the meter on the side of the wall. That is way too low, but back then they didn't really care about it too much. The second picture shows that it's underneath the soffits of the house. This is typical for a 60 amp electrical service, because for 100 amp services, the weather heads and the conduits are above the roof. The third part that you're looking for is the meter. The metal box that the meter connects to is called a meter socket. The glass meter has writing on it and so forth. And today in Edmonton, all of the meters have been changed over to an acrylic digital meter. These are the ones that can be read downtown. They don't even have to send out the meter readers anymore. But what you're looking for is this metal box. The one on the far left is a round metal box that the round meter fits into. The one in the center is an oddball. You don't see it that often, but that type of meter socket is usually put in the porches of the older homes. And of course, the one on the far right is again another round meter socket. Today, EPCOR does not accept round meter sockets as being 100 amp acceptable. There's a bit of a story behind it. If you want to find out more information about those, please just contact me. Included in this new 32-page document that we've got available for you is this picture. This picture is a breakdown of a quick reference guide. Now, this reference guide I normally laminate and hand out when I do face-to-face seminars. These have been around for the last 12 years, and these I'm sure are under the seat of a lot of realtors in the city. But what this is, the left-hand column shows you that the main electrical panel has no main breaker. It's unacceptable. The one below it has a main breaker, and it'll be a 100 amp in a 100 amp main electrical panel. The center column shows the meters. The top picture shows you your round meter socket. The bottom picture shows you a square or rectangular meter socket. Those ones are acceptable to EPCOR as 100 amp. But before I go any further, I need to tell you something. Those meter sockets today, EPCOR and the city of Edmonton have decided about 3 years ago that there's a change that they want done to those sockets. So in some cases, those have to be changed during a service upgrade. The last pictures on the far right-hand side are, of course, of the masts. Those are the weather heads. The top picture shows, again, underneath the soffits. The bottom picture shows through the roof. These are the ones that are acceptable today. Now, I want to explain something to you. Let's just move on to the next. I want to explain something to you about those three different things you're looking for. The main breaker, the square or rectangular meter socket, and the fact that the mast goes through the roof. Those three things must exist for it to be a 100 amp meters, 100 amp electrical service. About 4 or 5 years ago, we used to be able to go in and take the electrical panel and change it and leave the meter socket and the mast without touching it. What the city realized is we were putting in a 100 amp panel, but the meter box or meter socket and the mast were still all 60 amp rated. So they stopped that. You will be able to find existing a lot of homes with a brand new shiny 100 amp meter panel, breaker panel with a 100 amp main breaker, but outside you're going to have a round meter socket and the mast will be underneath the soffits. That is because the panel was changed, but not the outside. So please don't be confused when you're trying to identify if it's a 100 or a 60 amp service. Be careful of that. A few other things I want to tell you about are these. I got a call from realtors and they say, Rob, here's some pictures of what's existing. Is it a 60 amp service? And I say, yes. The next day, I get a call from the same realtor just screaming at me for lying to them and their client trying to get work. Because they tell me that the homeowner called EPCOR and EPCOR said the service coming to your house is 100 amp. Well, I've got to fix this problem because you've got to understand EPCOR isn't responsible for the wires coming from the power pole in the alley across your yard to the house, and then it connects onto the house. That is the piece of equipment that EPCOR is responsible for. Since the 1920s, when they were putting in overhead lines, they have always been 100 amp rated because they needed the size of the wire, because when it's windy outside and so forth, they were finding that the thinner wire broke. So since the 1930s, they've been putting in 100 amp wire, regardless of the size of the electrical service. So when your client called EPCOR and says, what size is my service? They looked at the wire and said, it's 100 amp, where in reality, when it hits the house, the wires in the conduit, the wires in the meter socket, and going down to the panel were all 60 amp. So don't get fooled by the client who says they called EPCOR and EPCOR said. Next one on this list is panel change, but not the rest. We just talked about that. Now, when you're outside looking at the meters, you probably will come across a few of them where you've got decks that have been built since the client moved in. Now, these decks were built, and the meter now is, instead of being up above your head, is now around your waist because of the fact that the deck was built. This is unsafe according to EPCOR, and they want to make sure it's brought to their attention. What it is those meters have to be between 5'6" and 6 foot to the middle of the glass. So if you walk into a client's home looking to list it and you see the meter about 3 feet off the deck, you know that that needs to be upgraded. The measurement is always done from your feet standing in front of the meter, not from the ground below. So if you've got a deck that's 3 feet off the ground, you start your measurement for the glass at your feet. It must be 5'6" to 6 foot to the middle of the glass. That's just a little something for you in case you come across one of these. EPCOR is taking too long to come out and look after service upgrades, and you need help. This is something that I created for you because what the problem is, let me give you a brief overview. You have a listing, you have a buyer that comes in, the buyer writes an offer, it's accepted, they want possession in 30 days. What the problem is in the summer is EPCOR is taking too long because in the summer, sometimes they're booking 6 and 7 weeks to come in and help with a service upgrade. And it'll be done after your client takes possession. What Robart Electric has done is we've created a document for you so that in that sort of a case, Robart Electric will give you this document saying Robart Electric and your client have entered into a contractual agreement for the upgrading of the electrical service at the aforementioned address. This will be done on such and such a date as per EPCOR's schedule. The reason this letter is absolutely imperative is because you all know that if that's still a 60 amp service, the insurance companies will not give you insurance until it's done. And if the insurance companies aren't insuring it, you can't get a mortgage. So when you find a situation like this, Robart Electric gives you this letter, and it's complimentary, by the way, gives you this letter, you give this letter to the insurance company and the mortgage broker, and they immediately give you insurance and a mortgage because Robart Electric is taking responsibility. It works wonderfully. I've tested it over the last 12 years. We've never had it fail. So if you're in a situation with a fast possession, please keep that in mind. And the last thing on this list is this. All underground electrical services are 100 amp minimum. And how can you tell if it's underground? Because on the meter, if it's overhead, you'll be able to see the wires going across the yard and the piece of pipe that comes into the top of the meter. On the underground, there are 2 conduits that come in from underneath. That's how you tell. Let's talk about aluminum wiring. And it's not going to, oh, there we go. Aluminum wiring. Aluminum wiring I found as early as 1968, and I found it coming to an end about 1975. What the thing is there is absolutely nothing wrong with aluminum wire. It's the connections to the plugs and switches that's called, and the problem is called cold flow, and it's regarding the compression of aluminum. The insurance companies are very concerned about this because aluminum wiring causes fires. If you look at the pictures on those two pictures on the screen, the top right-hand corner, I got a call from a homeowner. He says, Rob, he says, I'm in my basement and I can smell something burning. Can you come down and take a look? So I was curious about this. So I went to this guy's house, went down into the basement, and I noticed a long wall where there was a bookcase in the center. So I said to the gentleman, I says, is there a plug-in behind that bookcase? And he says, I've got no idea. I said, let's pull it out and see. So we pulled it out, and this picture is what we found behind the bookcase. Somebody had changed the plug to a Decora, but a cold flow happened and it burnt up the plug and it was burning the drywall. The picture underneath is very, very important. Aluminum wiring will increase, no, hold it. The way to fix aluminum wiring is what's called pigtailing. And I'll have a discussion with anybody because on the internet it says that there's 4 different ways. But pigtailing, in my opinion, is the only way to make this work. The realtor was with a buyer in a home, and the homeowner said that the house was pigtailed 2 weeks earlier by Uncle Dave. He says, you don't have to worry about the aluminum wiring. So the realtor called me up and said, Rob, my buyers are a little bit concerned about this. Can you come down and check it? Well, we have a thing called a thermography that is a camera that detects heat. So we went to the back, went and checked all the plugs and switches. And at the back door of the house, there were 3 switches. The center switch showed up as being very hot. So I took the cover and the switches out, and this is what I found behind the switch in this triple switch by the back door. Uncle Dave had been there earlier, but he did it wrong. And this is the result after 2 weeks. It had already started melting the insulation and so forth. And this is what causes fires. Aluminum wiring pigtailing is very specific about how it's done. If it's not done correctly, it increases the risk of fire. Okay, I want you to know that. So if you look on this page, the only way to fix it is pigtailing. Now, at Robart Electric, we take out an electrical permit so that an unbiased city inspector will come down, take a look at our work, and guarantee your client that it was done properly. This is the only way you can be absolutely guaranteed that it's done properly. Because I'm finding a lot of people out there are coming out saying that they can do pigtailing jobs when in actuality, they have no clue what they're doing because that's not their field of expertise. So the city inspector is the best way of doing it. I wanted you to see this picture. What this was I found this inside an electrical panel. Now, the ones on the left are burnt. Those are all aluminum wiring. The ones on the right are all copper. The reason for this is because whoever put in the aluminum wiring into these neutral wires didn't tighten down the screws, and they started arcing and they started overheating. Now, you are going to find situations where your home inspector is going to say there's half aluminum and half copper. The reason for that is in the early 70s, when they were building houses, they did not have the money that they do today. So they developed the main floor, but they left the basements undeveloped. Hence the aluminum wiring on the main floor. The basements were done years later. When mom went to work, dad got a raise, whatever the case may be, That's why half the panel is copper and half the panel is aluminum, because by the time the basement was done, aluminum was gone. So that's the reasoning for that. This is an example of the thermography that we used. This we found 3 weeks after a renovation. Somebody had gone in, changed all the plugs and switches, but it wasn't installed correctly. And this is what we found. It had already started overheating. So this is a quick overview of aluminum wiring, which you're going to come across in 1968 to 1975 houses. Finished basements with no permits. I'm absolutely positive none of you have come across finished basements with no permits. What it is this. I would guess that probably about 95% of the basements in Edmonton and surrounding area were done without permits, because everybody wants to save money and do it themselves. So what's required nowadays is a finished basement without a permit. Can you still get a permit? Homeowners cannot get permits anymore for a finished basement because they require 2 inspections. So a homeowner cannot get one. A master electrician can get a permit for a finished basement because a master only requires 1 inspection. A homeowner can't get one because the drywall is all complete and the inspectors can't go in and look behind the walls. But a master can go in and get it after the drywall is completed. What you need to do if you need a permit is you've got to go down to the city, get a building and development permit, and at that time, they give you an electrical permit. That's how you get that done. A legal suite. What's the difference with a legal suite? In the city of Edmonton, an inspector comes out and takes a look and, oops, sorry, there's no mouse. Sorry, little technical error. We got somebody trying to get in. I didn't see it. Anyway, finished basements with no permits. Let's go to legal suites. Legal suites. What makes a difference? A city inspector is going to come down and see you, and he's going to give you a list of things that you're going to need to have done. One thing you're going to need for a legal suite is you need a building and development permit to make it legal. They will give you an electrical permit at that time, and giving out electrical permits with building and development permits is something that's happened just in the last 6 months. And the thing is, the homeowner must choose and assign an electrician whose name will be put on that electrical permit. That's how legal suites are done nowadays. Legal suites require things like fire rating in the furnace room. They require egress-sized windows in the bedrooms. They require smoke alarms and so forth in the common areas, bedrooms, hallways, and so forth. There's a lot involved with legal suites. So if you've got a situation concerning legal suites, give me a call and we can talk about it. This section here, negotiations are pending. This to a realtor, I found was one of the most important things that Robart Electric developed. Let me give you an example. If you're in a house and the home inspector is there and the home inspector finds a 60 amp service, and this is 10 o'clock in the morning, you're scheduled to sit down with the buyers and with your seller at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, what are you going to do about the 60 amp service? Well, I set this up about 12 years ago, and it works great. What we did 12 years ago, up until about 2013, was we would have to come out and see you. We would have to take our pictures and measurements. We'd have to go back to the office, generate the quotation, email it to you. That's how you used to get the quotes up until 2013. Then in about 2013, I created what was called the quick quote. You call me up, you say, Rob, I got this address, these homeowners and so forth. I need a quote to take into negotiations. I would generate a quotation for you similar to this. It would have the scope of work. It would have your client's name. Okay, to go on with the quick quote. What this quick quote was is it contained the scope of work, your client's name, the address, everything, and it gave you a span of cost. That cost is the actual cost that it's going to take to do the service upgrade. That quick quote you take into negotiations and you get the deal done. It was a lifesaver for so many hundreds of realtors. But then I got a call from a realtor saying, Rob, we don't really like this idea of having two numbers. So I created the new today's version of a quick quote. It's done in live time using FaceTime and Google Duo. So if you're on site and the home inspector is there and you're concerned about 60 amp service or aluminum wiring, call me up, give me a 10-minute notice so that I can pull off to the side of the road or do whatever it is I need to do to get ready for you. And we would do FaceTime and Google Duo. You would walk through the home, showing me the meter, showing me the panel, showing me the outside and everything. From there, I would gather my information and give you an exact fixed number quote for that service upgrade or aluminum wiring, whatever the case may be. That document is sent to you and you take that into negotiations and you close your deal. That's done for any electrical at all dealing with residential. Now, the beauty of this thing is I've done these in as little as 8 minutes. So you can see the huge difference between taking days to get your quote back in 2013 or today when I can get it to you in as quick as 8 minutes. I'm pretty proud of that one. This is an example of what the official quote looked like. There was the scope of work, the dollar value, and a couple typical options that people were looking for. Let's go on and talk about inspectors finding a problem. I'm just going to talk briefly about this. Inspectors found a problem such as double tapping, burnt wires, missing covers, broken breakers, things like that. Today, and you're working with the seller, get the inspector's report, send it to me. I will go through the electrical section, pull out a list of all of his concerns, generate a quotation, send it to you so you can deal with it with the home buyers and sellers and help you in your negotiations. It's a wonderful tool that I've created for you. And again, it's done at no cost. Let's talk about black FPE stab lock breakers. You can see in this picture that there are two different colors to the breakers. Some of the breakers are white with black handles. Some of the breakers are black with black handles. The concern, and you can go to Google and type in FPE black breakers, you're going to find that the black breakers were notorious for not turning off when they were supposed to. I'm going to venture to say that until about 1968, 69, those FPE were the majority of panels being installed. There are millions and millions and millions of these breakers out there. And what we're recommending is the breakers with the black body and the black handle need to be changed for safety. Unfortunately, because of COVID, the factory that manufactures the breakers down in Mexico has been shut down since November 2020. So it is very rare that you can find new white breakers. So we just want to bring it to your attention that you can look like a superhero, go to your buyer or your seller, bring this to their attention and say, we'll call Robart Electric when things get back to normal. All right, some tools that we've used over the last 13 years that you guys need to know about. Facetime Quotes. That's the quick quotes that I can do for you in as little as 8 minutes. If you've got a quotation and you can't do FaceTime or Google Duo, call me. I'll get you to take pictures and send me pictures that I can use to put together the quotation for you. The reason I'm able to do this, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a pat in the back, in a 24-month period, Robart Electric had done over 250 service upgrades in and around the city of Edmonton. We are the highest producers in the city. So I bring with me a little bit of credibility and a little bit of experience. Inspector PDFs. Send me the inspector's reports. I can do the reports and generate a quotation. Letter for the buyers, insurance and mortgage. This is the one that I mentioned to you, that if you've got a quick turnaround and EPCOR can't get there, I can give you this letter once the client accepts our quote, of course. I can give you this letter, and this letter can be given to the insurance and the mortgage brokers, and your buyer will be able to get insurance and a mortgage. Basement safety inspections. This is something that Robart started about 4 or 5 years ago. A lot of your clients sometimes didn't feel comfortable with the results of a home inspector, and they wanted something a little bit more in depth. So Robart Electric can come out and do an inspection service. This is where we can go in and check for aluminum wiring. We can go in and check a basement that was done without permits, and check for illegal service upgrades and so forth. This middle one, basement with no permits. A lot of buyers nowadays are buying homes with basements without permits, but are they really concerned about the permit, or are they concerned about safety? What I'm hearing from the realtors is their buyers are concerned about safety. So what Robart Electric has done for you is we've created a service where we can come in and do a safety inspection of the basement, generate a report, and that report can be corrected and so forth by the buyer or the seller to ease your buyer's minds that the place is safe. Somebody's going to ask, how much is that service? That service is $285 plus tax. Another thing I've done for the realtors over the years is on-site consultation. People tell me I'm nuts doing this, but I think it's important. I've gone out 4, 5, 6 times in the last number of years where your buying client says, there's aluminum wire, I don't want this house, I love it, but I'm not going to take it because of aluminum. I've been asked to come out and sit down, have a coffee with the clients and explain about aluminum wiring, what's all involved. I've done that, and I will go out and do this with you absolutely free to help you out. I sit down with your clients, I explain about pigtailing, what the problem is with aluminum and so forth, and to be very honest with you, I have never walked away from the table where the buyer did not purchase the property once they feel confident that the aluminum wiring, in this case, was okay. It's a wonderful thing to have at your disposal. We've recently, probably about 6 or 8 months ago, created what's called the library. The library is a source of absolute true information for your clients. Now, you can go to Google and there's hundreds of different stories on Google, but what I've done is I've created the library, which is a gathering of the most important items that you're going to need to have for your realtors. Sorry, for your buyers and sellers. Now, what the library is you go in and the library is designed to give you PDFs that are drawn up to talk to you about service upgrades, aluminum wiring, and things like this. You're not an electrician. You're not supposed to pretend to know this stuff. If you've got a client who is interested, have them go to Robart Electric to the library and actually download PDFs and read about it on their own. You don't need to answer their questions about electrical concerns and so forth. The thing was created to show you what's available today in the industry. Here's an example of what happens when you go to the library. You're welcome to the library. The library asks your name. I put down Rob in this case, and it gives you an option to choose. Are you a realtor? Are you a home inspector? Or what are you? Then it lets you go through and choose a list of different things you would like to see. It gives you the report that you can download. And then it asks you, do you have any more concerns? is there anything else you need? And if you say yes, it will ask you your email address and so forth, and I will get back to you and answer any more questions you've got and provide you with any more documentation. It looks like it already went through this for you, but it just shows you the different steps that you go through. It'll ask you, of course, are you a home seller, a home buyer, a realtor, or a home inspector? And you choose one, and it gives you the option to choose the different things you want. Here's an example of what you'll find. It is a PDF that you can download. This stuff is available 24 hours a day to your clients. And again, guys, this was designed so you don't have to pretend you're an electrician and answer these questions. Robart Electric has created all these tools for you to help you walk through all the electrical concerns when it comes time to sell the house. I've been getting nothing but huge responses coming back from the realtors about the quick quotes, about the inspections, about the documentation, about me taking responsibility to have the work done, to help out you and your clients, close deals and so forth. Once again, we would like to ask you guys to enter your email address on the chat. And by doing so, we will send you a copy of this seminar, and we will send you a copy of the 32-page document for realtors that we've just created. I hope all of you had got something out of this presentation. We had a couple of technical glitches that I kind of enjoyed. Lanka, thanks to her, came over and helped me out with them. But guys, here's my email address. My phone number you've all got. If you don't, please contact me and through email, and I'll help you out with this. But please go in and enter your email address. We'll send you all this free information, and please stay tuned for any further updates and so forth to the industry that come about. We will send them out to you to keep you informed. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out and joining me today.